Today we're going to be exploring the absolute best place I have found in Japan to hunt for retro games. Welcome to the Surugaya Flagship Store, Shizuoka. I love Akihabara. Even though it's gotten increasingly touristy over the last decade, it's still a super fun place to visit, but the game stores there often have really inflated prices and are usually well picked through by tourists. This store, on the other hand, has the single biggest selection of retro games I've seen in my life, let alone in Japan, and it also has the best prices I've seen to date. So what do you say we get right into it and explore the amazing retro games of the Surugaya Flagship Store? So I have done a few videos on Shizuoka. I filmed this one while I was in town for the Shizuoka Hobby Show, which you can check out the video of here. Shizuoka is about an hour or so from Tokyo on the Shinkansen, and that lets you off at Shizuoka Station, which is about a 10-minute or so walk from Surugaya. Alright, so here we are at the back entrance of the store. There's another entrance on the other side of the street that's a bit larger, but we're going through the back today. And here is the floor guide. This time we are going to the third floor because that's where they keep all of the games. If you want to see a tour of the second floor where they have their model kit and hobby selection, check out this video here. Alright, so coming up the escalator, the first thing you'll see are a lot of video game toys and plushies. Here they have a really nice Kirby selection. Lots of different Kirby toys and accessories. And then we're moving right onto retro games. As you can see as I'm panning across, just an absolutely crazy selection of retro games, especially the Famicom stuff that we just saw. But we are going to move over first to Nintendo DS and Switch games, and you can see just this huge wall of DS games, really huge wall of Switch games as well, and then Game Boy games. So they had an incredible selection of complete in-box Game Boy, and as you can see going through the prices here, really nice prices, especially on those complete in-box Pokemon Green, Gold, Silver, Crystal. Compared to Akihabara, some of these prices can be as much as 50% less. Here we have an interesting Game Boy game by Hudson in a tin. This one is Bomberman. There were a couple of these. I had never seen them in person before. Here's another one, just an alternative packaging for those original Game Boy games. And here is the first Hamtaro game for Game Boy Color. The second one is very common. I see them in book-offs all the time, but the first one I don't see as often, complete in box, so that was cool. And here they have a ton of different hamster games, a whole selection, a section dedicated to just hamster games. There was definitely a big trend in the late 90s, early 2000s. This one here is published by Atlas. And here we have this DS game that comes with a special pen. I thought that was interesting for writing kanji. And I love Mr. Driller. I talk about it all the time, but I just love this box art and the whole style. The graphics for that game are really fantastic on Game Boy Color. Here's an interesting little PlayStation adapter that I had never seen before. This character on it. Last Bible 2. Classic Atlas game. Here's another little hamster game. And G-Arms, or G-A-R-M-S, I had never seen this one before. It looks like a spin-off of the Super Robot Wars series. And here's an interesting one, Aqua Life. So if you guys watched my Sega Saturn video, in that one I talked about Aqua Zone, which is a fish tank simulator for the Sega Saturn. I picked up an accessory pack here. You can see me throwing it into my basket. But this is a version of Aqua Zone for the Game Boy Color, which I just think is just very interesting oddity. Pat Labor, love that artwork. Cardcaptor Sakura, Shining Force. Here's a little Game Gear game that was thrown into this Game Boy section. And here is a really cool version of Sakura Wars Game Boy that comes with the Pocket Sakura. So if you guys remember the Pocket Pikachu, you're going to notice these look really similar. I almost thought it was the exact same device, but it looks like the shell is a little bit different on that Pocket Sakura, but still very, very cool. Papa Music, there was definitely a little trend of rhythm games there on Game Boy Color. And Metroid 2, super expensive for the Game Boy. But here you can see a much more affordable copy. That would probably be around, I don't know, $60, $65. So for a complete in-box Metroid 2, really not bad at all. And here you've got a little selection of One Piece games, including some Wonderswan games, which are in the wrong section, but for One Piece fans. And Bomberman Quest. I went ahead and picked this up because the English copy is super expensive, and I've always wanted to play Bomberman Quest. I'm a huge fan of Bomberman, and it's just such an interesting spin-off for that series. And this one was super cool and pretty rare as far as I know. I've never seen this before. This is the Atelier Ellie Special Edition with a figure. Never seen this before. Just a really cool collector's piece. And now moving on to the Game Boy Advance section, they also had a fantastic selection of complete in-box Game Boy Advance games, with some Puyo Puyo, of course. There are a few Puyo Puyo games for the Game Boy Advance that I, again, had never seen before. I was only familiar with Fever, but apparently they released a bunch of other Puyo Puyo games on GBA, so that was cool to discover. And N64 here, it's usually hard to find stores with a really nice CIB selection of N64 games, but they definitely had a pretty nice one here. You can see all of the Pokemon Stadium games and Mario Kart 64 here with the controller bundle. More N64 games. And I'm always looking for those Japanese exclusive N64 games. Puyo Puyo Sun. I have that on the Saturn. Really, really awesome game. And here's another Japanese exclusive called Get Love. I believe it is a dating sim. I've never seen this one before. It also looks like a board game. So maybe it's like a dating sim board game hybrid. I gotta look up some gameplay of that one. And here's another Japanese exclusive. This is Legend of the River King N64. This is a fishing RPG. And yeah, that's another one people don't talk about too often. And Pokemon Snap. What's interesting about this one is I did not know in Japan it had a smaller box than all the other N64 games. Not sure for the reason behind that, but interesting little thing to note. Some Bomberman here. And Mario Story, as it's known in the West as Paper Mario. And finally, we are at the Wonderswan selection. I have been collecting Wonderswan and Wonderswan color games like crazy here in Japan, and they had the best selection I've ever seen here. Just so many different Wonderswan games. And here's a cool one, Hataraku Chocobo, or Working Chocobo. It's labeled as a black and white game, but it's actually a full color farming game starring Chocobo. Lots and lots of other Wonderswan games here. Front Mission, I had to pick that one up. Huge fan of mechs, obviously, you guys know on this channel, and also Square, so that is like the perfect game for me. Romancing Saga, that's one I want to get eventually, passed on it to stay. Riviera, you guys might know it from the Game Boy Advance port, but it actually started out as a Wonderswan color game. And Wild Card, this is a cool card-based RPG that I want to get at some point. And then, of course, you've got your Final Fantasy. All the Game Boy Advance ports are actually based off of these Wonderswan color ports as well. And Blue Wing Blitz, this is a tactics game. I can't remember if it's the same creator or team as Final Fantasy Tactics, but it's one of those. And then another cute little hamster game. Some Wonder Classic. Gundam Side Story here. Very expensive for the style of game that is. It's always kind of struck me as odd. And then Gunpei EX, really great price on this. This one can get quite expensive. That's the color version of Gunpei, the puzzle game made by the Game Boy creator Gunpei Yokoi. Terrors 2, this is a horror visual novel. And here we have a Tekken game. This is Tekken Card Challenge. It's a card battle game. And of course, Puyo Puyo. I did pick this one up, although I will say in black and white, it's really, really hard to play Puyo Puyo. The whole game is hinged around the different color Puyos, and yeah, it makes it a bit difficult. Harobots, this is like a Pokemon style game in the Gundam universe starring little robots. And Rhyme Rider, famous rhythm game. Some One Piece games. The black and white version of Gunpei. And lots of SD Gundam games are released on the Wonderswan. Here you've got some Digimon games. What's cool about these Digimon games is often they can actually link up to the little handheld, like Tamagotchi like Digimon devices. And that's kind of cool, both of them being made by Bandai, that they can kind of link up and you can trade Digimon and have some extra features. Klonoa on the Wonderswan, very rare and expensive game. One nice thing about this shop is all the stuff you can just flip through it, like nothing is behind a glass case, even the expensive games like that. One of the really nice things about retro shopping here in Japan. And Gacho, a little wacky puzzle game. Chaos Gear. Here you've got an SD Gundam game, and you can see there on the back of the box it does show it linking up to the PlayStation version. Really cool how it links up using the wireless Wonderswan adapter and the PlayStation Pocket Station. And then you have this special edition or a big box version of SD G Generation Gather Beat that does come with that Wonder Wave wireless adapter, which is very cool. And just a few more Wonderswan games here. You've got another golf game, Dencha Dego. I don't know why you'd want to play this on a black and white Wonderswan, but hey, there it is. And Sai, that's a puzzle game. And Digimon Battle Spirit. This was also ported to the Game Boy Advance, I believe. And Chocobo Dungeon. And rounding it off with just a few more Digimon games showing that compatibility with the Digi devices there. And here we are moving over to the Sega Saturn games. Just an absolute monster of a selection of Sega Saturn games. Like I've said before, just never seen anything like this here in Japan before. Just an incredible selection, incredible prices, lots of big box games. Generally everything's in really, really nice condition. Really, really great prices. Can't emphasize that enough. The big box Nights into Dreams with the 3D controller. That's very cool to see. Some light guns. Phantasy Star collection for only 5,500. Just awesome to see that. And moving over to Dreamcast, you've got some JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is a fighting game I want to pick up at some point. Very import friendly, that game. Sega Gaga, really cool, quirky Sega RPG about game development. Very unique, very Sega game. Frame Guide, this is made by From Software. I actually picked this one up because the price was really nice for that game. Pen Trisalon, great hidden gem, really weird racer. Berserk, awesome game. If you're a fan of Berserk, it's even better, but even if you're not a fan of Berserk, just a cool action game on the Dreamcast. Some Seaman, of course. You're going to see that everywhere. And the Dream Eye Big Box. I think I pointed this out in one of my Akihabara game hunting videos, but just such a unique little device to do video mail and photo mail on your Sega Dreamcast back in the 90s. And Grandia for the Saturn. I know we're jumping back and forth a little bit here, but 700 yen for Grandia, you just can't go wrong. The pink Sakura Wars Dreamcast controller, very, very cool. And you can see here just the PS2 selection, PSP, PS1, these just huge walls with so many games. Here you've got some controllers, accessories, different odds and ends. And really cheap, like 600 yen, that's like $3. Just really fantastic prices at this store. If I had unlimited space, I definitely would have bought a lot more. Some of these are labeled junk. I believe this is the junk section actually, but a lot of it works. Like this little game system I picked up actually did work. A gun con here, complete in box. And some junk cables and accessories, some junk GameCube. Definitely something you could maybe steal the shell of that Spice Orange, for example. And this outlet corner, I get questions from people saying, hey, I want to build a Sega Saturn collection. Like, if you're going to Japan, this is a great way to do it. Games like Virtua Fighter Remix, very common but very affordable. Virtua Fighter 2, these are basically around $1 and change for all of these games. And in this outlet section, again, a lot of Virtua Fighter, but also like a couple of racing games, a couple of other games you can experiment with. And probably for like $10, maybe $15, build a really nice little starter selection of Sega Saturn games. Some pro wrestling featuring some Virtua Fighter characters. That's another neat one. And then this magazine section. This section blew my mind. They had so many magazines I had never seen before, and just an awesome selection. I'm only showing a fraction of it here, but they had this whole magazine dedicated to Dot Hack, which again, I just wish I could have picked up the entire set, the whole volume, because I'm just a huge fan of the Dot Hack series. Sadly, I just don't have the space right now, but it's cool to know it exists. That's the magic of these places for me, is discovering new things that people in the West just don't talk about or are not aware of. PC Engine magazine. One thing that they had over here I thought was so cool was they actually had a Neo Geo magazine, Neo Geo Freak, which I had never heard of. Some Nintendo magazines, more common stuff here. And then in the glass display cases, I know folks are always asking, show me the rare stuff in the display cases. This is more of the rare / expensive stuff. That PC Engine, a Super CD-ROM, and a Core Graphics here. I really wanted to pick that up. I was so tempted. Here's a nice big Fire Emblem. Very, very big price as well. Here's a cool Dragon Ball Super Famicom game that actually reads cards with a special adapter. And the Sammy keyboard controller for Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 for the GameCube. That one is a little bit more rare than the version I have. And a PCFX there. Not too bad of a price either for a PCFX. And one other cool thing about this store is they also had a couple of arcade machines set up. They had about 6 of them, and they were all set on free play in the back corner here. And they also had some magazines that were free to read and flip through, so that was cool. And here they have new old stock games. So people have been talking about this, but a ton of Virtual Boy games came through, and also some old Game Boy accessories, and these have been circulating all throughout Japan lately. This is an interesting one. It's a Pokemon clone. I picked that up for only 700 yen. And here they've got retro PCs. So these are so hard to come by. There's very few stores that stock them, and I was just really, really excited to see so many of them, and not just stocked, but also set up, and you can poke around with them, you can mess with them. Very cool. And yeah, just a few more of those Japanese computers here on this wall. And yeah, that's about going to do it for this video. Again, I cannot recommend taking the trip from Tokyo to come see this place. Whether or not you want retro games or model kits, this store is just a fantastic place to visit and go shopping. Highly, highly recommend it. As always, if you guys enjoyed watching this video, if you could give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, it would really help me grow the channel. And if you want to see more content, definitely consider becoming a channel member. I'm doing that instead of Patreon, and you'll get some exclusive videos in there, as well as some exclusive posts and things like that. You can hit the join button on the front of my YouTube page to learn more. And also, feel free to come and join us in our Discord channel. We're always there talking about retro games and talking about model kits and anime and all kinds of fun Japanese stuff. So definitely come and hang out with us there. Looking forward to hearing your comments about what cool things you saw. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!